literally taking us back to them UFO fights. I remember it would go boop, 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 and we had to fight the big aliens on the UFO. They're fighting flying saucers. They got black people fighting flying saucers. Like that Independence Day with Will Smith, Welcome to Earth. Reverend Al, you know Reverend Al, he's my pal, Reverend Al. Reverend Al doesn't like the idea of a UFC fight on the White House lawn. I talked about this a little last night on the WABC show, but we could go a little more in depth into it, especially the stupidity of Reverend Al and his race baiting. They're setting up a giant UFC ring at the White House, and they're going to have UFC there. I think it's a little weird. I'll be honest. I think it's weird. I'm not saying like the liberals are saying that this is another fucking downfall of America and more disrespecting of the people's, the White House. Not saying that. It's just a little odd. It's a little bit of a carnival atmosphere or something. And I hear Teddy Roosevelt held boxing matches on the White House lawn. They would build a boxing ring and boxers of the day would get up there and duke it out. Marcus of Queensberry rules, and they would duke it out up there. All right. Trump, is a little more show to these things, the lights, the music. The biggest argument you could give back to the liberals is the atrocities they have committed at the White House. One of the pride events where a woman is showing her tits on the White House lawn. Look, we all love tits. I love tits. And she's flashing. It's the White House. There's a little bit of decorum there and a little bit of respect. Fags running around the White House during this thing, and they were dressed provocatively. That was disrespectful to what is supposed to be a respected house of the president. But this is a little strange, a little like a circus. But I don't see it as being disrespectful. It's Trump. Trump's the president. Every president brings a little bit of their personality to their presidency. And this is something Trump does. Likes UFC. He's friends with Dana. We'll do it at the White House. Okay, sounds fun. So I get it. But Reverend Al has pulled out an even more asinine take on this. That, of course, has to be that it's racist, and it harkens back to anyone? Harkens back to, no, not Jim Crow, not this time. Yes, slavery. Slavery. How, you might say, how would holding a UFC fight on the White House lawn harken back to the slave days? Well, let Reverend Al tell you.
Because when we're dealing with this redistricting, Trump and others are trying to bring us back to an America that we struggle to get out of. So there is a connection of why they're having these fights on the White House lawn, the UFO and all the whatever they call
UFO.
it, and all that, because they're trying to go back to that when they'd watch people have these fights for the slave masters and they'd be entertained by that. They're literally going back to that. Let's not forget,
look at these ice raids playing out on America's
streets. Let's not forget one of the things that I think slips a lot of people. When Donald Trump first was elected in 2016, Mika.
You could cut it off there. He just goes into something else. But literally going back to that. Really? The slave fights, the Mandingo fights, like was portrayed in Django. That whole thing is literally like setting up a UFC ring, a UFO. They're fighting flying saucers. They got black people fighting flying saucers. Like that Independence Day with Will Smith, Welcome to Earth. Yeah, he's got the body of a fifth grader in gym class. Reverend Al. Yeah, I mean, it's literally the same thing, taking us back. First of all, did they pay those Mandingo fighters millions of dollars to fight? Because I know the UFC guys, they make a lot of money. They certainly make a lot of money. They live very well. Do they live in a little tin shanty out back of the plantation? Huh? Do they get whipped? Does Dana White go out there and whip his UFC fighters? Because literally, it's a hell of a word to use. Does he kill the fighters that lose and are injured? We've seen UFC fighters break their leg when they're in the ring. Does Dana take them out back and shoot them because they're now useless? Because, Reverend Al, literally, he will never stop being a race-baiting douchebag. He will never, ever stop. That's his whole game. That's been the grift for decades. When he was big, fat Reverend Al in the purple fucking jogging suit with the James Brown hair and the big Volkswagen hubcap medallion. That was Reverend Al then doing the same shit as he's doing now. But now he's got a California raisin head and the suit and tie. But he's the same exact guy. Literally taking us back to them UFO fights. I remember it would go boop, 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 and we had to fight the big aliens on the UFO. So, yeah, there he goes. Reverend Al had to come up with a racist angle for the UFC at the White House. Yeah. All right, Reverend Al, you calm the fuck down. Speaking of slavery,